with that, we'd love to introduce today's speaker. We have Aditya joining us from Biconomy. He's been building in the space. He's very, very knowledgeable in the space. He has a very, very interesting deck lined up for you all. We are starting with the basics. So Aditya is going to be talking about, like even terminologies, right? So if you all have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat, on the tab that you see on the right. There's a Q&A tab. This session is going to last for the next 30 to 45 minutes, where he walks us through his deck, takes us through some of these terminologies. You will understand the basics of Web3, and he's also going to share some interesting business models that come up, right? Some interesting projects, some interesting examples. If you find that you have any questions based on these slides, please put it up in the Q&A, because in the last 10-15 minutes, Aditya and me will curate this and we'll bring it up for you. So, yep, with that, introducing and welcoming Aditya. Aditya, over to you.
And so for Web3, you can think of it in terms of three key terms. So one is like the backend revolution. So this is the blockchain part. This is the tech part. In terms of how the architecture is different from like a Web2 application. The other important part is token economy, and I'll go a little bit more into it later on as well. But this is where cryptocurrencies come into play. This is where this is why you need tokens or for each sort of Web3 application. And the final is autonomous governance, wherein all the participants in that network can meaningfully participate in governing the network, in making key decisions. And you would have heard of DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations. And so this is some part of it. So this is the general gist of where we started, how people got tired of the fact that money was a centralized entity. Central banks could have like a monopoly on it in a way. And then we got Bitcoin. From there, people started thinking, okay, look, now this is a great use case for a distributed consensus in a way where no central authority is required to have thousands and hundreds of thousands of people to agree on things, to coordinate, to cooperate. Can we bring this to new use cases on the internet? And that is where the idea of Web3 came into the play. And
yeah, Aditya, just one question. I think some of them wanted you to go a little deeper into what does backend revolution exactly mean here?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I'm going to go into backend revolution and token economy a little bit later. So I have 3-4 slides for both of these. And so for autonomous governance. So yeah, I'll definitely go a little bit deeper into these.
Yep, that sounds good, I think.
Okay, awesome. So, and Web3, now that you have a general understanding of where Web3 came into play, you can also look at it in terms of evolution of the internet. So when we talk about Web 1, which was just internet, like nobody knew 2, 3, but that was just a read-only sort of internet, which in the 90s, where you could just go on the internet, search something, and that's all about it. The Web 2 was more interactive, where you can read and write, where you could, for example, social media, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. These are one of the key, you can say, flag bearers of Web 2, where it was more interactive. You could add content to it. You could read content. You can interact with it. And Web 3 adds one more element to it, which is you can read, you can write, but you can also own the aspects of the internet. You can own the value that that particular network creates. So just to sort of summarize, and then I'll go into more into like the backend revolution and the architecture, and where sort of Web3 is different from Web2 in terms of like the tech stack. So just to give a general understanding, blockchain is the underlying tech and the global settlement layer. So that is the chain on which all transactions or all interactions or everything, or the the global ledger on which everything is built out. That's the underlying tech layer. Smart contracts are basically the business logic for any decentralized application, which are called dApps, by the way. So decentralized applications. And so it could be financial applications, gaming applications, NFT applications, any application. But smart contracts are basically just a piece of code that explains the business logic that sits on top of a blockchain. And tokens provide the financial incentives and coordination mechanisms for anyone to participate and contribute to this network. So once you have this network, once you have like a distributed network for any application which sits on the blockchain, you need tokens to incentivize people to coordinate and to do the right thing, to work for the network, so that everybody's incentives are aligned. That is the way in which you make sure that it's a positive sum game and everybody is pulling towards the same goal. So that is where tokens and game theory and financial incentives, those come into the picture.
Aditya, one question for you is, you spoke about autonomous governance. So who decides the rules for a blockchain and who enforces these rules? I think this goes around smart contracts and the mining. So if you could go a little deeper into this, and maybe the LE5 version, like explain like
Yeah.
5 version of this, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. So in a way, so I would say the rules for a blockchain or Web3 is slightly different than in Web2, in the sense for Web3, the rules basically lay down the mechanisms in which people can coordinate in a way that helps everybody. So the rules in a blockchain are not essentially saying, like this is the truth or this is what happened. For example, in a Web2, in a banking system, the rules would be very different. But in a blockchain, the original creators or the token economics, the white paper, that would decide the rules, but the rules will just decide how people interact with each other, so that it's a positive sum game where what work should people do so that they earn rewards, what should they not do so that they are punished. So these rules are first decided by, let's say, the original creators of the blockchain. But the other aspect of it is autonomous governance, which is anybody can come in, or people like, say, token holders or people that are contributing to the network, they can come in and they can propose improvements to these rules. For example, Ethereum is a good example, and I think every other blockchain and every other project has it. But Ethereum has something called Ethereum Improvement Proposals, or EIP. And from time to time, you have a lot of people putting in Ethereum improvement proposals, which go into voting. And some of these could be, very important, which change the basic rules of how the supply of Ethereum was supposed to happen, how the incentive mechanisms were supposed to happen. But if the whole community decides that, yes, the best way forward is this, then if everybody decides, everybody votes, then as a community, as a network, these rules can be changed. So I do have a slide similar for Spotify. So
Awesome.
let me try it and explain it in terms of like the Web3 model. So let's say you have music, you are an artist, you have music on Spotify, and they usually have streaming, let's say, exclusive rights. You can only upload it on Spotify, for example. When you imagine it in terms in the Web3 space, the song would be owned by the artist themselves. What it would mean is, let's say if that song, and forget NFTs or the tech part of it, but you own that song, so you can have let's say 10,000 streaming platform built on top of this layer could be built, but the music would still be owned by the artist. And when you are, let's say, interacting with this NFT, or when like you see this example, like a particular song could be tokenized and you can buy a certain rights to this song, you are not buying it through any of the platforms. So you're not buying it on Spotify, you're not buying it on YouTube, you're buying it on the smart contract itself. So you're interacting directly with the smart contract. The musician owns the NFT for that song. And they don't have to let's say depend on any of these platforms. So when they're streaming it through any of, let's say somebody makes like a decentralized Spotify, they would use these NFTs, they would use this music, but the proceeds and the ownership of the songs and everything would still go as per the smart contract. And let's say the platform, goes bust tomorrow, nothing will happen to the music, nothing will happen to the NFTs, nothing will happen to the people that own royalty rights, and all of that would stay because all of that is in the smart contract and not in the platform or the front end or the streaming service. To wrap up, about tokens. So tokens basically add an incentive mechanism to these networks so that everybody who's participating in the network has their incentives aligned and they are all working towards the same towards the same goal. And on one hand, you have investors and exchanges, so people who think the token should be worth more or more worth less. They're buying and selling. That is where your price discovery comes into play. And on the other hand, which is also equally important, is you have the applications which power that these tokens power and the users, and then their use also adds value to the network, which in turn adds value to what the people should believe that the value of the network is, which increases the value of the token, which again comes back, creates the whole loop where it becomes more valuable for users to participate in the network because they are rewarded with tokens that are worth more, and so on and so forth. That is how, very broadly, this sort of token economy is.